Good morning, my dear friends. Today's topic is supreme legislation and subordinate legislation. What is legislation? First, we have to study. Legislation means lawmaking. Legislation means making a general orders or by judges or it is carried by the crown. So, legislation includes all activities which result into lawmaking or amending of the law or transforming the law or inserting new provisions in the existing law. All these includes in the part of the legislations. There are two kinds of legislation, one supreme legislation and another subordinate legislations. What is supreme legislation? Supreme legislation, it comes from the sovereign power in the state. It is incapable of being repealed, annulled, or controlled by any other legislative authority. That means supreme legislation can be repealed by only the supreme authority. It can be controlled only by the supreme authority. In a democracy, parliament is the supreme authority having the power of supreme legislations. In China, Communist Party is the supreme authority. In Burma, military is the supreme authority. So, supreme authority is making the legislations. It is supreme legislation. It has no rival. There is no legal limitations on the sovereign's authority. Sovereign authority can make legislation anywhere. The law is command of the sovereign. Every person should show obedience to the sovereign. But sovereign does not show any obedience to anybody. Sovereignty extends its power throughout the country. It is legally omnipotent. The decisions of the parliament binds its successors also. But parliament has the power to alter, change, modify, amend, or abolish the previous statutes. The law of England cannot be changed except by parliament. Another kind of legislation is subordinate legislation. The subordinate legislation gets authority, it's from the supreme power. It is dependent for its existence and validity from some supreme power. In India, legislations made other than the power of the parliament are subordinate legislations. All subordinate legislations are subject to parliamentary control. Subordinate legislations can be annulled or repealed by the supreme authority. Now, kinds of subordinate legislation. Colonial legislation. We have to study it under pre-independence. India was ruled by the British people. In England, British Parliament makes legislations. For British Parliament, it is not possible to make legislation on all the matter concerned to the colonies, including India. Therefore, legislative power was delegated to the colonies through East India Company. All such colonial legislations were subject to the control of the British Parliament. British Parliament can repeal, alter, supersede any colonial enactment. This is the first kind of subordinate legislation. Another kind of subordinate legislation, executive. Nowadays, it is the most important subordinate legislation. This type of legislation is practiced in democratic countries like India. In this case, center has a parliament. It is a source of supreme legislation. remaining all legislative bodies are inferior to parliament. Modern days, democratic countries adopt policy of welfare of the people. Today's government is welfare state. To implement the social and welfare programs, delegation of the legislative power given to executive. This is called executive legislation. Third one is the judicial. See, India, we adopted the doctrine of separation of power. Government has divided into three organs: legislature, it makes the law; executive, administration of law; judicial work is interpretation of statutes and administration of justice in courts. Basically, judiciary has no power to make laws. However, in certain occasions, the judiciary is compelled to make the laws and rules. In India, Supreme Court is the highest court of the country. High Court is the highest court in the state. So there is a delegation of rule making power from Parliament to Supreme Court to make appropriate rules for the administration of justice in India. Similarly, High Court are also empowered to make rules for the proper administration of justice of courts. This is the third delegated power. Another fourth one is the municipal legislation. Municipalities are empowered to make rules with limited powers for the administration of in their respective jurisdictions. Municipalities, it includes municipalities, Jilla Parishad, Mandal Praja Parishad. They are empowered to fix taxes on buildings, etc., and they can impose penalties for the defaulters. This is another legislation, subordinate legislation. Autonomous legislations. It is the process of making the law by person for their own guidance, and they have been authorized to make such laws. The state delegates to certain groups of certain individuals a limited legislative power. Limited legislative authority is given to universities, companies, corporations, etc. This is the last type of subordinate legislations. Thank you.